play it any louder, then it's getting shut down.
My name is Waffles, and I'm a government whistleblower turned political commentator, and this is the last 24 hours in the news. Today is October 16, 2025. It is 6:14 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Here are the top news highlights for the past 24 hours. Judge finds administration tied FEMA relief to immigration. Court says it has breached a prior order. A federal judge ruled the administration violated an earlier injunction by conditioning FEMA and disaster relief funding on state cooperation with immigration enforcement, saying government failed to act in good faith. This ruling creates immediate legal exposure and could restore or protect funds for affected states while the case proceeds. Harris County and multiple state AGs sue over cancellation of Solar for All clean energy funds. Harris County filed suit, and a coalition of state attorneys general filed litigation challenging the administration's cancellation of Solar for All and EPA clean energy grants for low-income communities. Plaintiffs say the rescissions were unlawful and that the funding cut jeopardizes projects, contracts, and household energy savings. Expect requests for injunctive relief. House Republicans formally request former special counsel Jack Smith to testify and turn over documents. The House Judiciary Committee demanded an interview and documents from Jack Smith as part of heightened oversight. The committee sets deadlines and warned of further subpoena action if cooperation is not forthcoming. This raises the possibility of documents, fights, and public hearings. A federal court extended an order preventing the president from deploying National Guard forces to Portland, limiting federal use of Guard troops against civilians in that jurisdiction. This is the most recent concrete domestic mobilization limit. It directly constrains federal deployments inside U.S. cities. U.S. military strike off Venezuela, political and oversight fallout at home. The U.S. conducted a lethal strike on a vessel near Venezuela that reportedly killed 6 people. The operation has prompted bipartisan congressional questions about legal authority and international law. Venezuelan and international governments have protested. This action is generating domestic oversight activity and legal and political scrutiny. Federal crowd control and press tactics. Litigation remains active. Ongoing prior orders are still enforced. While much of the principal court order constraining federal tactics was issued earlier, courts continue to review and extend limits on federal enforcement actions affecting protesters and journalists. An ongoing legal check on domestic federal law enforcement tactics. Administration rhetoric and legal threats towards rivals and trade partners continue. The president publicly threatened to sever certain trade ties, cooking oil, soybean, and the administration is pursuing aggressive legal administration rollbacks, grants, program cancellations, rhetoric, and policy moves that function as threats to rivals, contractors, states, and political opponents. These actions have prompted lawsuits and congressional responses. Policy shifts and institutional power, program cancellations, and rescissions create immediate service risks. The administration's cancellation or rescission of federal programs, notably the Solar for All grants and other executive actions, are producing tangible service and project disruptions at the state and local level, e.g. budget shortfalls, halted installations, and contractor uncertainty. Litigation is the key mechanism to restore or block these changes. Court ruling on FEMA conditionally increases disaster aid uncertainty. The judge's finding that FEMA relief was improperly conditioned raises real risk for timely disaster response planning. States now have stronger grounds to resist conditionality and may pursue expedited relief while the government appeals or revises policy. Federal staffing actions at public agencies threaten institutional capacity. Large personnel actions affecting the CDC and other HHS units, termination notices, partial reversals, were reported this week. While some reinstatements occurred, experts warn that surveillance and outbreak response capacity has been degraded, that erosion is a systemic risk to public health preparedness. In other news, there's a significant amount of people expressing concern over the non-delivery of SNAP benefits in November. It is being reported that recipients of the SNAP program, which provides food to welfare recipients who are on the SNAP program will not be able to receive their food assistance in November in the United States. Millions who depend on welfare programs face an uncertain November if the government shutdown continues. Colorado officials say all SNAP benefits will be cut, but federal warnings suggest only insufficient funds rather than blanket termination. I have no idea what that means. When I called on the phone earlier today, they told me that nobody will receive their SNAP benefits in November in the state. My understanding is that that is a violation of legal precedent in regards to the Goldberg versus Kelly case that took place in the Supreme Court in the 1970s. So this move does not look legal. SNAP benefits for October are broadly considered safe, but the USDA has warned states not to transmit November benefit files yet, citing a funding lapse if Congress doesn't act. Some local agencies like Colorado are already telling recipients that no one will receive SNAP in November unless funding is restored. Other programs, including housing assistance, medical aid, Medicaid and Medicare, TANF, and nutrition programs like WIC, face varying levels of danger depending on how long the shutdown continues. Programs classified as mandatory, Medicaid, Social Security, etc., are more protected against immediate cuts, but administrative delays are likely. Housing programs funded by HUD that rely on discretionary appropriations are vulnerable. Renewals and contract payments could stall. The shutdown could last days, weeks, or even longer. The longer it goes, the more programs will run short of funds, and the harder it will be to maintain assistance. Legal challenges may force the government to restore benefits, especially if courts find shutdown cuts violate due process or constitutional protections. It does. The legal precedent for that is Goldberg versus Kelly. So I am encouraging anybody who loses access to their services or benefits to file suit. I've written a Substack with information on what divisions to file suit with, and Goldberg versus Kelly is the legal precedent that would be probably the best to use in fighting any cases. Anybody who's been on these benefits for a while ought to know already that this is a problem that's been going on for a while, and I am assuming it is because Donald Trump was calling the Congress during the pandemic to interfere with the funding of our federal agencies. So it's the same people causing the same problems. Even though Trump was not in office in 2023, he is doing the same thing. It was him. He was calling the Congress. I have a public admission of that. It's all documented. So, as a private citizen, Donald Trump, in my opinion, at that time was engaging in conspiracy against the United States and interfering with governmental operations for political gain. But this is what we're looking at, and this is going to affect 45 million Americans. So I strongly suggest that people start standing up for themselves and consider filing suit, even if you cannot find a lawyer, because I don't think this is going to be difficult to fight in court. Trump has been losing a lot of cases. What people should do and how to prepare. Stay alert. Monitor announcements from your state's Department of Human Services or Health and Human Services. Those will often tell you whether or not your benefits will be cut. Document all communication. Keep everything documented. They should not be able to shut off your benefits without fair hearing. So again, if they do it, it's likely a violation of the law and under the Constitution would be considered deprivation of property, most likely making it a civil rights violation. Document all communication if your local or state agency says no exceptions. Get that in writing. Letter, email, name, and date of the call. Get the name of the person you're talking to. Consider if you're in Colorado, this is a one-party state, I can record anybody I want. That's useful. That's useful for legal challenges. Apply or recertify early. If your state allows you to submit documentation or applications now, do so, even pending your benefit delivery. Consider community support. Food banks, mutual aid groups, local charities may become lifelines if SNAP is cut. Know your rights. People may be able to file lawsuits. I highly suggest we do. Let's stop letting this idiot bully us. There are 45 million Americans who are going to be forced to go hungry in November. So I think that's something that we should do something about. Contact your state attorney general and file a complaint. File a civil rights complaint if your benefits are shut off. If you do not receive your benefits in a timely manner in November. People may be able to file lawsuits asserting that cutting benefits without hearings or notice violates constitutional safeguards, e.g. Goldberg versus Kelly. Prepare financially if possible. Stock up on essential groceries, medicines, and household needs now because delays may hit hardest in November and beyond. Clean energy project and contractor disruption, legal challenges and cancellations for Solar for All. Funding risk delaying or canceling installations for low-income households, threatening energy savings and jobs in the local renewables sector. Municipal budgets and contractors are already reporting impacts. Trade tariff moves and shipping sanctions raise supply chain risk. China's targeted measures against U.S.-linked Hanwha units and tit-for-tat port fee actions, together with administration threats around cooking oil and soybean trade, are creating higher freight costs and commodity volatility that could push prices for consumers and disrupt agricultural export channels. FEMA funds and disaster grants in legal limbo because of the court finding and ongoing disputes. Some disaster relief and mitigation funds are subject to legal challenges, a practical risk for states planning near-term recovery projects. CDC staffing upheaval and partial reversals reporting this week, documented mass termination notices at CDC and HHS during the shutdown. The department rescinded many but not all notices. Public health leaders warn surveillance, contract tracing, and outbreak detection functions could be impaired while staffing uncertainty persists. This is a near-term public health vulnerability. Now, before we get too far into today's reporting, I do want to talk about the fact that these guys are milking this shutdown, that Republicans are milking the shutdown that they are using to purposefully create crisis, which is, in my opinion, conspiracy against the United States of America and something they should be criminally charged for. I want to remind people that members of Congress are not free from criminal prosecution, and I think they should be criminally charged. If Congress cannot function, if a large number of House or Senate members are missing, there are mechanisms for continuity, and this is something that our current serving members of Congress on the Democratic side, who are actually showing up to work, need to be considering and talking about. Let's not just overlook this and let this stupid bullshit happen. Do your job. If a large number of House or Senate members are missing, there are mechanisms for continuity. Vacant seats in the House, state governors can call special elections to fill them. Vacant Senate seats, governors may appoint temporary replacements until elections can be held. If an entire Congress were unable to meet, e.g. mass disappearance, which is what we're dealing with, attacker infiltration, the continuity of government, COG, plans allow emergency reconvening or remote sessions under martial or national emergency law. These plans were updated after 9/11. Each chamber of Congress has its own attendance and quorum rules. Absentee limits. The Constitution, under Article 1, Section 5, says a smaller number than a quorum may adjourn from day to day and may be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members. This is what I want to see our current members of Congress that are actually showing up to work doing. Let's get some action, take some action, hold these assholes responsible. They're trying to make it so that 45 million Americans cannot eat in November. This is serious. They're depriving Americans of all kinds of public services. This is a national security threat that we are dealing with, and it should be treated as such. A smaller number than a quorum may adjourn from day to day and may be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members. Meaning, if too many members are absent, which is half of the fucking Congress right now, the Republican Party, more than half, Congress cannot conduct business, but it can order members to return or penalize them for not showing up. Order them to return and penalize them. Do it now. Vacancies, House of Representatives. If a member disappears or dies, the state governor must call a special election. No time limit in the Constitution, but usually 3 to 6 months. Under the 17th Amendment, State governors can appoint temporary replacements until an election is held. These are things we ought to consider. If too many members vanish and no quorum can be reached, the House and Senate cannot pass laws, and succession to legislative control effectively freezes. But states can refill the seats through their governors and elections. We can replace these motherfuckers right now if they don't want to show up to work. Cabinet officers serve at the pleasure of the president. If they disappear, resign, or are incapacitated, the president appoints replacements. When the people or states can intervene if federal continuity totally breaks down. For instance, if a quorum of Congress cannot be restored and both president and vice president are gone, power devolves temporarily into state governments under the 10th Amendment. Emergency continuity of government protocols, which allow temporary appointees until elections can be safely held. Ultimately, the people do not take succession directly, but state governors, legislatures, and courts act as the constitutional failsafe until new elections restore legitimacy. So those are some things to consider, and I hope that maybe somebody who can do something hears this. These guys need to be mandated to return and penalized for their absence. In international relations with the U.S., U.S. strike near Venezuela increases hemispheric tension and UN protests. The vessel strike has drawn formal complaints from Venezuela to the UN Security Council and bipartisan scrutiny in Congress. Expect diplomatic pushback in the region and potential hearings at home. I also heard that there was B-52 bombers flying over Venezuela. So there are reports about a smaller number of U.S. strategic bombers, B-52s, helicopters, and other aircraft operating near Venezuelan airspace, which may be what people are conflating right now. This is something I've heard people talking about. Somebody was charting the location of the planes, watching them. Here's a breakdown of what is confirmed and what is claimed or unverified flyovers by U.S. B-52 bombers near Venezuela in international airspace, specifically about 2 to 3 B-52H Stratus Fortress bombers have been tracked flying off the Venezuelan coast. These bombers reportedly took off from the Barksdale Air Force in Louisiana, flew through the Yucatan Channel, and entered a flight path north of the Venezuelan coast. They were observed orbiting or holding in these areas, e.g. north of Venezuelan islands like Gran Roque and La Orchilla, for periods of time, about an hour or more. U.S. officials say this is part of an expanded military presence or shows of force in the Caribbean linked to anti-narcotics operations, among other strategic concerns. What, you're going to bomb people claiming that they're trafficking narcotics? That sounds kind of extreme and like inaccurate targeting. They were not flying over Venezuela. Some claims may possibly exaggerate or misinterpret flight tracking data. Reports that there were simulated strikes inside Venezuelan territory are unverified. The flights appear to have been in international airspace, so just another attempt to heighten tensions. And then Trump is reportedly attempting to do some weird Kim Jong-un shit of wanting to show off his missiles that he is wasting our money on. All the money that he stole. While 45 million Americans are worried that they're not going to be able to eat, Donald Trump is planning to fire missiles and waste our money so that he can feel special with a weird fetish, just like Kim Jong-un. The U.S. Marine Corps has announced a live fire exercise military demonstration off Camp Pendleton in Southern California, tied to its 250th anniversary. My ass, little man syndrome, just wants to try and look cool at the expense of 45 million Americans that are going to be forced to go hungry. It is a waste of tax money. This event is called Sea to Shore, a review of amphibious strength. It was initially reported and criticized by California Governor Gavin Newsom that the exercise might require temporarily closing Interstate 5, a major north-south highway, and possibly even involve missile or ordnance fire over or near the highway. However, the Marine Corps later clarified that no public highways or transportation routes will be closed and that training will occur on approved training ranges under established safety protocols. Probably better to just avoid Interstate 5. Newsom's office backpedaled on the closure plan after federal assurances that the event would not shut down I-5. Media coverage frames this as part of a political clash, Newsom accusing Trump administration of staging a show of force or a vanity parade, which is exactly what it is. The White House and military defending it as regular display of readiness. It is not regular. There's nothing normal about this. I'm 38, I have never in my life seen any crazy-ass missile firing parade trying to look cool shit. There's no credible evidence so far that long-range missiles or strategic missile launches, e.g. ICBMs or cruise missiles, are being fired from California as part of this event. The technical details, how live fire is defined, what types of ordnance, how far trajectories may go, have not been fully disclosed. The exercise is scheduled soon, this weekend in many reports. So that's like what, today's Thursday, Friday. So in like 2 days, it could possibly happen. We're not even given a heads up. So people in California may have missiles flying over their heads and have no idea what's going on. Because this administration just wants to have a party, wasting our money while forcing people to starve and scaring the shit out of the public. So that's what's going on with that. Trade posture and diplomatic outreach continue in parallel. The administration is simultaneously pressuring trade on China and negotiation trade and strategic ties elsewhere. These moves affect supply chains, ports, and allied coordination. Active litigation, Harris County's lawsuit, and a multi-state AG filing over Solar for All and EPA climate funding are the most notable new filings. These suits seek to block cancellations and recover funds. Oversight pressure, House Judiciary's request for Jack Smith increases congressional, legal, and political theater. Expect subpoenas if cooperation is limited. The federal judge's finding on FEMA conditionality and the extension of blocking National Guard deployment to Portland on October 15th show courts are actively limiting some of the administration's moves. Over the past 24 hours, the dominant legal pattern is legal pushback and operational disruption. Courts and plaintiffs are rapidly responding to executive rescissions and conditional funding moves, notably NR Energy and FEMA, while assertive national security posture abroad. Caribbean strike is generating diplomatic and congressional friction at home. The combination raises immediate operational risks to disaster relief, clean energy projects, public health capacity, and the courts' ability to remain the principal mechanism checking near-term executive action. The S&P 500 today closed at 6,629.07, down 0.6%. Dow Jones Industrial Average closed at 45,952.24, down 0.7%. Nasdaq Composite closed at 22,562.54, down 0.5%. So for those of you who are visual, those charts are going to look a little bit different for the stock market today, and this is likely what they're going to be looking like moving forward because the information has been coming from other news outlets, and so I am now generating my own charts. This is the S&P 500 for today. The Dow Jones and the Nasdaq. And here are the trade and economic highlights for the past 24 hours. Shutdowns drag on growth, $15 billion weekly loss. Treasury officials updated that the ongoing federal government shutdown, the Republican shutdown, the shutdown of the United States government caused by Republicans for political gain, which is an act of conspiracy against the United States, which is unnecessary because Trump has been stealing a significant amount of money from the American people through his tariffs, is costing the economy about $15 billion per week in lost output. The disruption is already eroding short-term growth and investor confidence. Mid-Atlantic manufacturing contracts sharply. The Philadelphia Fed's business index for the Mid-Atlantic region plunged to 12.8 in October from 23.2 in September, signaling contracting factory activity. Yet new orders rose while shipments slumped, and input and output prices both rose. Treasury yields fall on risk and credit concerns. U.S. Treasury yields dropped notably as investor sentiment shifted toward safe assets. The 10-year benchmark slid several basis points, pressured by trade tension fears and regional bank stress. Gold hits new records on safe haven demand. Gold surged past $4,300 an ounce, marking its fourth consecutive session of highs. Investors flocked to it amid uncertainty over trade. Monetary policy and financial conditions. Fed Governor Waller backs 25 basis point cut. Christopher Waller publicly supported a 25 BPS cut at the upcoming Fed meeting October 29th, citing signs of softness in jobs and growth. Okay, so what this is idiots encouraging interest rate cuts when it's not a good idea to do so. So Fed Governor Christopher Waller, he's one of the top officials at the Federal Reserve. The Fed controls interest rates, which affect everything from credit cards to mortgages to job growth. A 25 basis point cut means the Fed would lower its key interest rate by 0.25%. It makes borrowing cheaper when people are not likely to have income, so it would be in the long term detrimental to the economy. The reasons that Waller's dumbass gave for wanting to cut interest rates: he said that there are signs of softness in jobs and growth. The market is cooling, fewer new jobs and slower hiring. Economic growth, GDP, business spending, and production is slowing. Yeah, it's because you're inflating the fucking market with tariffs and robbing the people blind. And if we all take out a bunch of loans, then we're all going to be a bunch of debt slaves. And that's why they're trying to cut interest rates, to trap the American people after manipulating the markets and just destroying the fucking economy. Excuse my language, we cuss over here. Parental advisory. The next Fed meeting is on October 29th. That's when the Federal Open Market Committee, FOMC, votes on whether to raise, lower, or hold rates steady. Waller's statement signals that at least one key Fed official, one key dumbass, one motherfucker trying to manipulate the markets for personal gain, who is supporting a coup against the United States, in my opinion. Waller's dumbass, which supports a rate cut for fucked up reasons, makes it more likely the Fed will actually lower rates at that meeting. In plain English, a top Federal Reserve official, dumbass Christopher Waller, says he supports lowering interest rates by 0.25% at the end of October. He believes the economy is slowing down and the job market is weakening. No talk about doing anything about the fucking tariffs. No talk about inflation. No, we're just gonna cut the rates so that we can force Americans into debt slavery. It's a real thing. Google it. I don't think Christopher Waller is working for the American people. And we've got another dumbass trying to destroy the American economy and force Americans into debt slavery. That would be Stephen Moran. Stephen Moran pushes for more aggressive cuts. Fed Governor Stephen Moran reiterated his call for steeper rate cuts, including at least a half-point reduction, while suggesting the central bank should avoid appearing politically influenced by the administration's policies. Well, that is a politically influenced statement coming from Stephen Moran. Fed officials debate trade talk versus independence. Moran criticizes peers for publicly blaming tariffs for inflation. It's because they're causing the fucking inflation. Yeah, Moran is a corrupt official and somebody that we don't need. that is not working in the interest of the American people, and we should be wondering why. Moran criticizes peers for publicly blaming tariffs for inflation, warning that selective commentary could erode perception of Fed impartiality. Well, you can lie through your fucking teeth all you want, but your decisions are stupid as shit, and nobody should be listening to you, and you should not be sitting in the fucking Fed at all. Get a job, get a different job. You don't belong in the Federal Reserve. Trade, external relations, and currency effects. U.S. buys Argentine pesos. Develops $20 billion support facility. The U.S. expanded financial backing for Argentina, purchasing pesos and coordinating with banks to create a $20 billion debt facility backed by a currency swap line, part of a geopolitical economic play in Latin America. India cuts Russian oil imports after talks with the U.S. Indian refiners have begun slashing Russian oil imports by 50% following recent U.S.-India trade discussions, signaling a pivot linked to U.S. diplomacy and energy strategy. Dollar weakens on trade and rate cut expectations. The U.S. dollar declined across major pairs, pressured by worsening U.S.-China trade dynamics and growing market bets on Fed rate cuts. U.S. warns China risks decoupling over rare earth controls. Washington criticized China's new export restrictions on rare earth and critical minerals, warning of a forced decoupling if Beijing does not back down. And remember, kids, the stock market is not the economy. Just because the S&P 500 or Dow Jones might be performing does not mean that wages are growing, jobs are secure, people are thriving, or that inflation is under control. And here are the top hazardous weather outlook items for the United States over the next few days. Central Plains, severe storms. A developing storm may cause locally severe weather in western Kansas and southwestern Nebraska today. Flash flooding, isolated flash flooding is possible in portions of eastern Montana and western North Dakota. Northern Plains and Rockies, October 16th and 17th, frost and freeze warnings. Widespread frost and freeze warnings are in effect for portions of Central Rockies and Central Appalachians tonight into Friday morning. Northern Plains, flash flooding, isolated flash flooding remains possible in portions of eastern Montana and western North Dakota. Northeast and mid-Atlantic, dry weather. A stretch of dry weather and warming temperatures will likely exacerbate the ongoing drought conditions through the week. For the most up-to-date information, please refer to the National Weather Service and the Weather Prediction Center. And here are the top international news highlights from the past 24 hours. Trump and Putin agree to meet in Budapest. Trump is going to go meet with his boss after robbing us of billions of dollars. Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin have agreed to meet in Budapest to discuss ending the war in Ukraine. My ass, they're probably meeting to talk about what they're going to do with all the money they just stole from the Americans. That's just my opinion, based on my observations. Trump described their recent 2-hour call as very productive, and both leaders are exploring diplomatic avenues to resolve the conflict. My ass, that's what they're claiming. I don't know, is our tax money getting stashed away in Russian bank accounts? That's what I want to know. Israel-Hamas truce faces challenges. Israel and Hamas are trading blame over violations of a U.S.-mediated ceasefire in Gaza. Disputes over the return of hostages' bodies and the disarmament of militants threaten to derail the truce. Israel is preparing to reopen the Rafah crossing with Egypt for Palestinians, but has not yet set a date. U.S. proposes defense initiatives. The European Union has proposed flagship defense projects to counter drone threats and protect its eastern border. The initiatives aim to enhance the EU's defense capabilities amid growing security concerns. Bolton indicted for mishandling classified information. Former U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton has been indicted by a federal grand jury in Maryland for allegedly mishandling and transmitting classified documents. The indictment marks a significant development in the investigation into the handling of sensitive information. All right, so we have another case of what looks like vindictive prosecution. This is somebody that was working for Trump. Trump is calling him a bad person. He is a former Trump national security advisor. So for anybody who does not know who John Bolton is, here's his photo per PBS. Focus. Top of the screen. Anyways, this is John Bolton. This is who we're talking about. Kenya police clashed with protesters. At least 2 people were killed when Kenyan police fired shots to disperse mourners attending a memorial for opposition leader Raila Odinga. The incident has sparked outrage and calls for accountability. I want to remind people that Putin is targeting Africa. Africa is a place that has been under consideration internationally as an economic opportunity. And it does look like, as far as what appears to me to be multiple coup attempts taking place in multiple nations being spearheaded by Putin, that Africa is one of the targets. I don't know if Kenya is one of them or not. But it is something to have in mind when we're looking at things in Africa. Economy and technology. XRP cryptocurrency experiences significant drop. The XRP, the cryptocurrency associated with Ripple, has fallen 15% in just 24 hours, dropping from 0.55 cents to 47 cents. The decline follows a broader market downturn and has raised concerns among investors. You know, when you get into crypto, what happens is these whales come in and they throw a bunch of money into the crypto, and then people start dumping their money into the crypto, and then they take their money out and also take your money with it. And that's why we don't invest in crypto. Italian publishers file complaint against Google AI. The Italian Federation of Newspaper Publishers, FIEG, has filed a formal complaint with the Italian Communications Authority, AGCOM, accusing Google of using AI-generated overviews of news articles that harm traffic to their websites. India launches hydrogen-powered train. Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated India's first hydrogen-powered train in Varanasi. The train, developed under the Make in India initiative, aims to reduce carbon emissions in the rail sector. Tunisia faces civil unrest. Violence erupted during a protest in Tunisia's Phosphate Belt region, leading to injuries and arrests. The unrest highlights ongoing economic challenges and public dissatisfaction with government policies. And that's the majority of what I got for today. For today's news, the top news highlights. This concludes today's news report. We'll see you guys later. Everybody stay safe out there.
So the Olympics is great. And Johnny, for the others, you know, the World Cup, Johnny is the head of it. We had our top people, Wasserman. They all came in on the Olympics, and then I saw Johnny. And we got the World Cup, too. And, you know, it's only because they rigged the election that I'll be your president representing you there. You know, I got both of them. I got the Olympics, and I got the World Cup. And I said, you know, it's too bad. One was in 2026, and the other was in 2028. And I said, I won't be there. I won't be your president. But then they rigged the election, and now we won. So I'm going to be your president for the Olympics and for the World Cup. So, Johnny, thank you for the World Cup. And everybody, thank you for the Olympics. We're going to have a great time.
Hey, guys, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment to my videos. And also, don't forget to check out my shop where you could get this awesome Real Patriots Punch Nazis t-shirt. America, fuck yeah! And if you go to the link tree in my bio on most platforms, it's got links to everything, all of my stuff. You can find my shop there. I'm on eBay. You can also get this cool Exterminate MAGA sticker, because MAGA's fucking cockroaches. And fuck MAGA. Abolish MAGA. Fuck you, MAGA.